Good morning and welcome to Backchat. I'm Janice Wong and your guest presenter is Ada Wong. Good morning, Ada.
Good morning, Janice.
On today's program, we're talking about a controversial decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn race-based college admissions in the United States. The practice, called affirmative action, has been around for decades and was meant to increase campus diversity and address intergenerational inequality that have plagued Black and Latino American communities. There's been a mixed response from Asian Americans, with some cheering the end of race-conscious admissions, but others saying it will have a negative impact on diversity. So how will this ruling affect U.S. universities and applicants from Hong Kong and elsewhere in Asia? Will it cause further polarization? After 9:45, we'll look at aspartame, one of the world's most common artificial sweeteners, that's set to be declared a possible carcinogen later this month. Let us know what you think on our Facebook page, Backchat on RTHK Radio 3. Email us at backchat@rthk.hk or give us a call on 233-88266. Now, to kick off our discussion this morning, we have in our Admiralty studio James Lockett, Chairman of Democrats Abroad Hong Kong. And on the line, we have Dan Van Hoy, a member of Republicans Overseas, and Professor Jerry Postiglione, an Emeritus Professor at the University of Hong Kong and coordinator of the Consortium for Research on Higher Education in Asia. Good morning to all of you, and thanks for joining us on the program. Good morning.
Good morning, Janice.
Good morning. So let's start with Professor Postiglione. How far-reaching is this ruling?
Well, this ruling, Janice, I think, was not unexpected. And as you probably know, the state of California and the state of Michigan had already banned affirmative action back in 1998. So this is not unexpected. The society evolves, politics changes, universities have various perspectives and ways of dealing with the new policies.
Right, and
yeah.
Right, and the Republicans, of course, they largely backed this change. And Dan Van Hoy, can you explain why? I mean, why was it needed before and why not now?
Well, good morning, Janice,
morning.
And everyone. I have 6 more hours in Hong Kong, and I'm off to the USA permanently. How about that?
Wow.
So it's an interesting timing on this. I want to say farewell to Hong Kong. I've loved my 22 years here for sure, and it's an amazing place, always will be. It's not just the Republicans. There are some prominent Democrats who have asserted for a long time, like Jonathan Turley, professor of law, Alan Dershowitz, Democrat professor of law, that this simply was not right. I want to read part of the Declaration of Independence upon which this 14th Amendment, which is what we're focusing on today, was called the Equal Opportunity, Equal Rights Clause. We hold this second paragraph of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which a lot of people like to read on July 4th. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed with their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And so the idea that we would take and say, well, because of your color or your ethnic background, we're going to give you a special preference, which is actually equity. It's not equality. Equity is when a person or an elite says, you know, we think you deserve special attention, special deference, and we're going to give it to you just simply because of your ethnic background or your color of your skin. I think most people, honest people, genuine people, would say at its face that's absolutely wrong.
All right, and Mr. Lockett?
Good morning.
Good
Glad
morning.
To be here. Thank you. I kind of disagree, and the reason why affirmative action was based upon a level playing field to give people a disadvantage from minority community. It doesn't extend to blacks or Hispanic. It's for all races across the board. You have poor white people can afford university and colleges. You have poor Asian American, and you have poor Latinos, and you have poor Native Hawaiians too as well, and Native Americans too. So it's a disjustice, you said, based upon blacks and Hispanic. At that time, in the landmark case back in 1978, yes, it may be the case back then, but now, as time evolved, things have changed across the board. Laws are changing. Because if you take away affirmative action, why not take away the college legacy system? Refers to about your parents went to that school, how much money your parents give to the school, what's the bill of name. And that's really not fair right there. The reason why affirmative action is have a level playing field to give equal opportunity for all people to attend college and universities.
Right. So is there now other ways to achieve that, to make sure that there is diversity on campus?
Yes, it is. What President Biden, his administration, looking at right now, what they plan to do is have a national conference among educators and student leaders from different backgrounds and different ethnicity, sit down, how can we enhance the admission policy to equal to everyone across the board, not to a certain group of people. I mean, to everyone. That's the important key thing, the demographic is to everyone. We're all Americans, so access to education to be affordable and to everyone across the board.
Right. And Mr. Lockett, I mean, now that this affirmative action has been overturned, who do you think, who will this change actually benefit, and will minority students suffer as a result?
I would say in general whole, people will suffer from this because it's a setback. You go back to the Jim Crow laws during that time period area where it was very hard and difficult for a person of color to get into top league university because, number one, they didn't have the money, or they didn't go to a good high school, or they came from an undeveloped area. People say, well, we don't fit in. But that should not be a criteria for admitting into school. So this law right here will hurt the disadvantaged. The people cannot afford university and college.
Well, James, you need to change the Constitution, because this is precisely what the Constitution says. We shall not discriminate on the basis of skin color or ethnic background, full stop. All right? So what needs to be done, if you want that to happen, you need to propose a constitutional amendment. It's very clear in the 6-3 ruling that the majority of the court saw this that way, even some who normally vote to the liberal side. And the idea that you're going to simply, as the Biden administration is often doing, saying, well, we don't like what the court has given us, so we're just going to find some way around it. And they never say, okay, we're going to abide by the court decision, we're going to be a lawless administration, and move forward from there. I want to share just briefly a personal story, all right? I have a friend who's a American Chinese, who graduated from law school and got an MBA. I asked her about this just this morning. I said, here was her response. She said, well, personally, I went to UCLA undergrad and absolutely loved that school. I applied for law school and was rejected. While at the end of the first year of law school in San Diego, so she went on to San Diego to get her law degree, I received a letter that stated I was wrongly rejected because I was Chinese and considered too many Asians at the time, and they offered me a place. So UCLA Law School had said at that time, this was before the law was passed, you're Chinese, we have too many Chinese, we can't give you a place. And they later apologized. And she was someone who grew up, she says here later in my conversation with her, I grew up with secondhand clothes, eating day-old food, and I worked my whole life with nothing paid for me. So I should have been treated like a black person when it came to admission because I worked full-time and supported myself. There's an exemplary story of the fact that in the U.S., if you're willing to work hard, no matter your skin color, no matter your ethnic background, and push and press and aim for your goals, and you can get there and make it happen.
Mr. Lockett?
Okay. Some parts, I agree that the Constitution needs to be changed. I agree along the areas right there. But where I disagree is that the Biden administration is not being lawless behind this. They said, they make it very, very clear what we want to do. We'll work with this college administration, work with the university, work with other groups as well to make the admission process practical for everyone across the board. for all Americans in general, not just for different ethnicity, for all groups itself. Now, one thing that the right try to conflate is between the CRT versus affirmative action. They try to conflate it together. This totally different itself. The affirmative action is based upon a set of policies that aim to promote equal opportunity for historical marginalized group of people. It doesn't say homogenized group of people. It doesn't say black. It doesn't say white. It doesn't say Asian American. Homogenized group of people. Right. Where that the CRT
again. So who decides that, James? James, who decides that? Who decides who's marginalized? My Chinese friend here felt she was marginalized because she was Chinese, and yet she struggled and had to work so hard to get her law degree, to get her MBA, and she did it on her own with hard work and determination. Who decides?
That's what we need to change right there at the college level, okay? That's why I say we need to work together as a group of people. Republican, Democrat need to sit down, work together, put out these policy and policy to benefit everyone across the board.
Right. Mr. Lockett, California has already passed a law. So what are the lessons from California about diversity laws? Do you have any stories or statistics?
Yes. When California passed their law, the enrollment went down among minority students. Okay. There's a group called the Legacy 98. Where that when they passed their law, only 98 applicants applied out of 5,000. Their enrollment went down, it dropped. It hurt the diversity process there. So they had to look at the law because what the law is going to do, it's going to hurt these programs.
All right, I just want to go back to Professor Postiglione. Hello, Professor?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Hi.
Or Ada? I'm sorry.
Hi, it's Janice here. I just want to ask you about the impact of this ruling on students in Hong Kong, because there are many students in Hong Kong who study at American universities. How much of an impact do you think the ruling will have on them?
Well, I think you can definitely say that what the U.S. does with regard to policies toward ethnic minorities, racial minorities, and other disadvantaged groups has an influence around the world, and in some ways that's very positive. But I think it's worth reflecting back just a second, because the two gentlemen represented their political parties very well. Of course, in America, the two political parties interpret the Constitution in different ways, and the courts, depending upon who's appointing the justices, will affect the outcome of the decision. So it's very difficult for the two parties to come to a complete consensus. And that, of course, has an effect on how we see things. But if you remember, to look back to Harvard University in the early part of the 20th century, and there was a time when the examinations were dominated by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and all of a sudden, with the immigration from Europe, many Jewish students began to score higher than the Anglo-American students, and Harvard instituted what it called a character indicator. And the reason I mention that, many of you who are up on this issue probably know that the reason that Harvard was restricting the number of Asians attending Harvard University was because they were rated lower on traits like positive personality, likability, courage, kindness, or whatever. So we must also take a break from looking at the courts and the legislature and look at the universities themselves and what they're doing. This is documented very much by a lot of the research. And the other related factor, which is coming to the fore now as affirmative action is no longer able to be used, are race indicators. Particularly race cannot be an indicator for admission. It can be written into an essay for admission, but it cannot be considered a factor. So the emphasis will move more toward economy and income and wealth. And as we know, since the 1980s, the gap in income in the United States and around the world, and this includes this country where we are now, has grown tremendously. So even as far as the Asian, the World Economic Forum has cited inequality as one of the major crises of our time. So what happens if you look at the top-tier universities, and the researcher Chetty and his team has done this, they found that there are more students admitted to the top-tier Ivy League colleges, more students in the top 1% income bracket than in the bottom 60% income bracket. So as you can see, universities themselves have something to consider when they begin to admit students. And the reason for all of this is, of course, diversity is important, because after students enter university, their education, the quality of education, depends very much on the students that are their classmates, not only because they learn more about the country that they are part of by crisscrossing and interacting with the different sectors of the population, but it also helps them to think out of the box when they become engineers and scientists.
Professor.
So in short, the implications for Hong Kong are tremendous. We have generations of South Asians in Hong Kong over and over again that are underrepresented, whether they're Nepalese, Pakistani, Indian, or others. They're underrepresented in the population of the universities. That's the original question, I believe. Sorry to go around, but I think that what the gentlemen have been discussing needs to be maybe put in some historical context with some of the research as a background to what they were saying.
Right, and
they were speaking very, they represented their political parties very well.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. And following up on what you said, I read an Economist article which said that if Harvard wants a diverse student body, and it could eliminate preferences for children of alumni or big donors and become far less white, wealthy, and privileged. So the law might not affect them. Would you agree, Mr. Lockett or Mr. Van Hoy?
Yes, I agree. It goes back, what I said before, it's about the college legacy system, because they base upon how much money or who in your family went to their school. So, in order to have equal opportunity education, you have to eliminate that too as well. You don't eliminate affirmative action, also eliminate the college legacy system.
All right. So Dan
I read through almost all of the opinion today. It's quite long.
246 pages.
Yes. One of the main points that's made is eliminating racial discrimination means eliminating all of it. So I would hope that's something both Democrats, Republicans, Independents can agree on, that indeed we need to try to root it out wherever it exists so that people have a fair chance. We Americans used to pride ourselves in being fair people. We would go to great exploits internally and externally to try to promote and make fairness happen. But we've slipped away from being fair. And now we have people, James mentioned critical race theory, which actually says, if you're white, you really have a debt to people of color, and you need to...
Excuse me, it doesn't say that. I'm sorry to correct you.
I'm sure it certainly does, Professor. I've studied it
Professor?
completely.
Professor, go ahead.
That's basically what critical race theory is. It says we're going to fight discrimination with more discrimination by giving people of color special preference.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
That is exactly true.
No, critical race theory is the academic framework that examines how race and racism intersect with social, culture, and legal system.
Talking about how it's being applied, James, how it's being applied in the current political and social climate.
All right, and Professor Postiglione, what's your understanding?
Yeah, critical race theory is not taught in primary schools or in secondary schools. It's basically something that came out of the law schools, and it focuses on what's called institutional discrimination. And many ethnic groups and racial groups in the United States have been discriminated against. Critical race theory, there's an impression that it's only about African Americans, but it also covers Asian Americans. The United States challenge as a multi-ethnic and multiracial country is to find ways to unify the country in order for its development to continue. And it is a country that has a First Amendment on free speech and is basically very open about the kinds of thinking that are permitted. So the critical race theory really represents, it brings out the conflict between the political parties very well, because each one uses critical race theory, again, for its own interpretation. So, for example, if you and your original question was about how the U.S. situation might have implications for Hong Kong. You can, in any school in Hong Kong, talk about critical race theory, of course, and there will be no problem at all. So this brings out to you also the fact that you've got to look at different cases, different society, even within countries. You've got to look at different groups. And from an academic point of view, by the way, most of the discussion so far has been about getting in. Most ethnic racial minorities do not attend the top tier Ivy League colleges, which represent a tiny, less than 5% or less of all of the colleges and universities in the United States. What's more important is what happens after they get in. As academics in universities, we have to identify those people who are from marginalized backgrounds and ensure that everyone has a chance to succeed. What often happens in the U.S. is after groups get in the university, we think that the task is over. And there's a high dropout rate for low-income students.
All right, Professor, we're going to have to take a break for the news very soon. But before we do that, because Dan Van Hooy won't be staying with us for the whole discussion. Dan Van Hooy, when you talked about a lot about fairness and equal opportunities, and also earlier, Mr. Lockett, he mentioned legacy admissions. Do you think to really ensure a fair system, the legacy admissions arrangement has to go?
Honestly, I don't have an opinion on that, but I would say this. Hong Kong parents, don't send your kids to the school in the USA. They have become indoctrination centers. They're teaching kids what to think rather than how to think.
That's not true. I'm sorry, I had to interject right there. That's not true.
Critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion, which isn't any of those. So parents, watch out. Send them to Singapore.
That type of thinking
Mr.
right
Lockett?
there. That type of thinking right there. That's why we're so divisive right now in the U.S. The type of logical thinking on the right. That's not true.
It's absolutely true.
No, that's not true at all. No,
sir, it is. I'm happy to debate you anytime, any place.
I'm happy to debate you too. Come down right now.
Let's
Let's go to the pub, have a drink. We have a debate about this.
Absolutely.
All right. Mr. Lockett and Mr. Van Hooy, we have to take a break for the news. Thanks again for joining us this morning. That's Dan Van Hooy, a member of Republicans Overseas, and James Lockett, a chairman of Democrats Abroad Hong Kong. And Professor Postiglione, we will have to continue our discussion after the news in around 2 minutes' time, when we will be joined by an Asian American Studies scholar based in Hong Kong.